Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game from the 2018 Shenzhen tournament in round 7. It's a game between Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Ding Liren. Now, if you're seeing this game, I'm pretty sure you know why I'm showing it. A lot of you have requested it already, but with the World Chess Championship going on and my trip to London and back, I haven't had the time to cover it. Now, you might have seen my channel has reached 300,000 subscribers, so thank you all very much for that, and especially for congratulating me and for, contributing in every possible way to reach this milestone and achieve this accomplishment. But I will not be showing a Tal game today. I will be showing this game because in 5 days, I believe it's in 5 days, yeah, on 18th of November, Latvia is celebrating its 100th birthday. I believe it's called a centenary. So as Tal was from Riga in Latvia, I decided to, share this honor, and I will have my celebratory Tal video for reaching 300,000 subscribers on the same day that Latvia is celebrating their 100th birthday. I thought it'd be selfish otherwise. I think that's definitely the way to go. So up until then, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus Ding Liren, and you will not be disappointed by this game. It's, well, Tal would not be disappointed by this game. So let's check it out. Maxime has the white pieces and he opens with e4. We have e5, knight f3, knight to c6, and now bishop to c4. Knight to f6, we have the two knights defense, and here knight to g5 is a very nice move, but it was not played in this game, rather d3 was played. Bishop to c5, we have castles. This is still very much theory of the two knights, and it's been played plenty of times by plenty strong players throughout history. Rook to e1, d6, c3, we have a5, and now comes bishop to g5, pinning the knight. h6, we have bishop to h4, g5, bishop to g3, and here bishop back to a7. If black didn't castle, for example, if this rook was still on h8, then perhaps ideas like even h5, sacrificing the g5 pawn, would be possible. But as Ding also decided to castle, such ideas are not available here. But it doesn't matter, this is still well within Ding's preparation. We have bishop back to a7, not allowing any d4 or b4 ideas in the future to come with tempo. Knight to a3 by Maxime, and here a lot of moves have been played. Knight e7 was played here, king to g7 was played, unpinning the f7 pawn, so maybe the rook can come over to g8 or h8. But here, one of the moves that was never played is actually knight to h7. This is what the Ding plays, and from this move on, from move 11, this is a completely new game. Never before was there this position on the board. Bishop to g4 was also played at one game. I think it's the most famous game that happened in this variation, Anish Giri versus Pavel Elyanov in 2016 in Norway, where Giri won a very nice game after he exploited the idea that after bishop to g4, h3 was played by Giri, then after bishop to h5, the f5 square became very weak, of course, and then knight to c2 was Giri's idea, trying to take advantage of the weak f5 square, and unfortunately for Elyanov, he could no longer maintain the spin. He had to retreat with the bishop to cover f5, and then white just had a really excellent position. No doubt Ding prepared all of that, that's why he goes knight to h7. We have knight to d2 now. And here g4, taking away the f3 square from the knight, and also now f4 will not be possible, as then g captures on f3 en passant will be played. If you try something like king to g7 to immediately unpin and prepare f5, then knight to f1, and if black indeed does push f5, then pawn captures, bishop captures, and now after knight b5, going after the bishop, as the dark square bishop is extremely strong here, bishop b6, now comes knight e3, with an attack on this newly arrived bishop on f5, and the white's position will be alright. Surely this is all, again, well within Ding's preparation. So instead, g4. We have knight to b5, going after the very strong bishop to b6, of course not allowing white to capture it, also protecting the c7 pawn, so now the black queen can move. Bishop to b3, not allowing a4 to take away this retreat square from the bishop. We have a4 by Ding, bishop to c2, and now comes h5 finally. Ding's pieces coordination is very nice here. The bishop pair is very strong, both bishops eyeing that king side. h4 is a threat, and Maxim has to prevent it. He plays h4, and here Ding does not go for g captures on h3. But this is already move 16. It's hard to say if Ding was still well within his preparations, as it creates a really complicated position. You invite the white queen to capture on h5, and after king to g7, you want to bring your rook into the game through the back rank. Bishop to h4, attacking the black queen, and now f6. And although black isn't in any imminent danger, the rook will now be able to enter the game. You can even play something like queen to e8. Rook e3 is still not possible with this very nice rook lift because of the strong dark square bishop, but white will at some point be able to push d4, close off this diagonal, and maybe even giving up some material to go for this very nice rook lift, as the white queen is taking care of all of the light squares around the black king. So let's say d4, knight g5 now, captures, and after knight to c4, going after the dark square bishop, rook to h8. Queen to f3, and now it's really a crazy position where it's actually black who's attacking, but surely if Ding had anything prepared like even remotely like this for move 16, surely he would have found it and played it. So most likely he didn't come so prepared, but who can prepare? I mean, this is already such a branched out variation. It's and you know, you do have a time running on your clock. So first he decided to play d5, so capturing en passant will no longer be possible. And here we have d4. If e captures on d5, then Ding will be perfectly fine. Queen captures, and after c4, queen goes back. You've just created some weaknesses here. You have 2 pawns on a light square. Ding's dark square bishop will be extremely strong here. So instead, d4 was played by MVL. D captures on e4, D captures on e5 now. We have rook to a5 and now c4, protecting the knight on b5. And here e3. And when I saw this position, when Ding played e3, I thought this is truly a remarkable position. I really like black here. As, I mean, you're already started an attack. Perhaps ideas like rook captures on b5 will be possible to free the d4 square maybe for the knight. Seems like a very powerful position. But then when you look at it, white's also really good here. This pawn on e5 and h4 are tremendous, taking away the f6 and the g5 square from black, and which are basically the only retreat squares for the black knight, which MVL will utilize in a very interesting way. But okay, f captures on e3. We have knight to b4 now, attacking the bishop, but also now the d3 square is very weak here. We have a3, and here if you capture on c2, for example, knight captures, queen captures, bishop to e6, knight e4 is coming. Again, the f6 square will be very weak. White will be very strong here. The rook is coming to d1, and this black rook will not be doing all that much really on a5. So after a3, knight to d3 instead by Ding, attacking the rook on e1. And here again we have a very rich position with a lot of ideas possible. Here you kind of do have to move the rook, but where do you move it to? If rook to e2, then you kind of get in the way of your pieces, not really something you want to do. And if you move the rook to f1, then bishop will be captured on e3. This pawn will become very weak. And on the other hand, if you do something different completely, like remove the knight, bishop captures, then you get queen captures, and after queen e2, rook will come to d8. Black is definitely doing great here. There is one very nice engine line after this knight to d3 move, but you know, engines are engines. Actually, rook to f1 seems to be the best, because you can even give up the e3 pawn, because after bishop captures on e3 and king to h1, you don't really have all that many good moves here for black. For example, knight captures on e5. That's a good move for black, because of course you don't want to capture and allow queen captures on h4 with check. But after the knight captures on e5, you get not bishop captures, but you can just move the queen e1, and then the other rook is coming into the game, and again white's position will be incredibly strong here. So or you could capture, for example, queen captures on d2, but then the knight here is now available to be captured, as the queen is no longer attacking dh4 square. For example, queen captures, bishop captures here, and then white will be just fine here. So after this knight to d3 move, although a very interesting move, rook to f1, offering a lot of possibilities, Maxime goes for b4. And here again, we might say that all hell breaks loose. So what do you play here? After this b4 move, your rook is under attack, but also white rook is still under attack. So what happens if Ding captures it? If knight captures on e1, then you get queen captures on e1. Definitely the best idea. Rook to a8, you have to get the rook out, but then c5. And now, okay, black is up the exchange, but your rook is on a8, and your bishop has to go to a7, and now both the rook and the bishop will be cut off from the game, and it's not that likely that they will return to the game very soon. Bishop captures on h7, king captures, knight e4, knight is coming to f6, rook is coming to d1, such a tremendous even winning position for white. On the other hand, you could also, after this b4 move, you could capture on b5, also seems like a very interesting idea, but then pawn captures on b5, and after knight captures here, queen captures, black will develop, bishop d6, rook to d1, again, white will be better here. But after this b4 move, what was played was pawn captures on b3 en passant. And okay, knight captures, attacking the rook on a5, and now you have knight captures on a1. And here you have to capture the knight with the queen. If you capture this rook, for example, knight captures, then you get knight captures on c2. And then after queen captures, you're no longer defending the knight there, and black would be up a piece. So after knight captures on e1, queen captures on e1, we have rook to a6, and now comes c5. So Ding, although it's not like Ding wanted to be up in exchange and go into this passive position, but Maxime simply forced him into it. Bishop to a7, and now comes queen to b1. So one of the things that we've mentioned is that the e5 and h4 pawns are really tremendous here, taking away the g5 and f6 square from the black knight on h7. So queen to b1, creating a double attack against the knight on h7. The knight has no retreat squares, and you're not really able to defend it. You could defend it with the rook h6, but then the bishop will simply move the rook. So f5, forced. And here, it's not forced that you have to capture this en passant. Perhaps it would be even better to keep the knight on h7 with your very strong pawns, and black will never be able to push f4 while the knight is on h7. So here, Maxime actually decides to do it. He plays e captures on f6 en passant, knight captures on f6, and now knight captures on a7, finally getting rid of Ding's strong dark square bishop. Rook captures, and now comes knight to d4, not allowing the black queen to use the open d file for herself, and also controlling the very important e6 and f5 squares. Sorry about that. Queen to e7, attacking the e3 pawn, and we have bishop to f4, now defending the e3 pawn, and also with ideas of bishop to g5. So queen captures on c5, and now comes bishop to b3 check. A very nice idea, as now the king can't really go to h7. If you to h8, then you would allow queen to g6. That would be too much activity for white. So king to g7, blocking the queen's approach to the g6 square. Bishop to e6, and now black is really in a lot of trouble, because now if you capture, of course, knight captures comes with a monster fork, but white is also threatening to capture the bishop here. If bishop captures bishop, then you will not be able to recapture, as it would also come with a fork. So Ding finds a very nice reply to this. He plays rook to a4, and rook to a4 is a very nice move, because now if you play bishop captures here, black will not capture on c8. First, black will capture the knight here with the rook. And after pawn captures, queen captures with check, king moves, now capture on f4. The bishop on c8 is still under attack, you will have to move it or defend it. Queen f5 defending the bishop, and now after captures, it's actually black will be up in material, he will be up a pawn with a better game. So rook to a4, a very clever move by Ding, but Maxime doesn't fall for it. Queen to d3, defending his knight on d4, and also preparing. You still have to figure out how to deal with this bishop captures on c8 threat. And here, after giving the position a lot thought, and it's only move 33, and still you have to reach move 40 to reach time control, rook to a6 was played by Ding. So now his idea is, of course, okay, after bishop captures, the rook will be guarding the e6 square, and also you're attacking the bishop on e6 twice, so white has to do something. But to really understand why Ding had to play rook to a6, we must ask ourselves, what happens if knight d7? You simply don't allow white to capture my bishop on c8. Then it's a really beautiful maneuver, so feel free to pause the video here and find why this is terrible for black. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are very close to breaking Ding's 100 games unbeaten streak. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop to b3. Seems very reasonable, of course. Now, knight to e6 is a terrible threat that would cost black the queen, and also it comes with a very nice attack against the black rook. So rook a6, taking care of the e6 square, but now comes bishop to c2, everything with tempo. The queen is threatening to come to h7. Knight to f6 blocking, but now queen g6 check. You can't stop both of them. King moves, now queen h6 check. King g8, now comes bishop to b3. And now black will simply lose a whole lot of material. Knight has to block, now comes queen to g5 check. King moves, bishop captures, this comes with check. King moves, bishop f7. The queen on c5 is unguarded, so rook captures, you lose the queen, and of course the game. So now that we've seen what happens, and we know that there's really no good move here for black. You can't block this, there's no way to improve your position. So Ding simply takes away the e6 square from the white knight, but it doesn't help. Again, feel free to pause the video here and try to find how to continue this game, or how Maxim continued it, because it's very, instructive. So again, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are even closer to taking away Ding's chance of #1 spot in the world in unbeaten games. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop captures on c8, rook captures, and now comes queen captures on a6. A temporary queen sacrifice. And now, of course, if b captures on a6, knight e6 check takes away the black queen as well. After we move the king, white would be up a piece and, of course, winning. So after queen captures on e6, on a6, queen captures on d4. Ding also has to take some material. Now, if you play b captures on a6, sorry about that, b captures, if you play instead, after this queen captures on d4, if e captures on d4 and b captures on a6, then the material is equal, pretty much, it's still going to be a fight. But what Maxim played is absolute best. He plays queen to f1, defending his rook on a1, and also threatening ideas, well, you don't want to allow this bishop to create this pin, or even to go to g5. So queen to e4, but now comes rook to d1. And there is much more activity for white in this position. c5, we have rook to d6, and now comes queen to e7. A very important move. If you simply start happily pushing your pass pawn, because you do have a pass pawn that's protected by a rook, then Maxim had bishop to h6 in mind. And now, of course, king captures will lead to queen captures on f6, king h7, rook d7 check, and the queen will deliver checkmate. So after rook to d6, queen e7, and now comes queen to a1, simply pinning the knight on f6. King to f7 unpinning, and now bishop to e5 with a triple attack against the knight on f6. So you do have to move it, as there's no way to further protect it. Knight e4, and now rook to h6. And here, Maxim had to calculate precisely that Ding's queen captures on h4 will not cost him the game in any way. Because here, if you make a slow move, or not the greatest move, like let's say if you play queen to a2 check, black will simply block it. You don't really have any checks you can connect into something more than just checks, and well, queen to e1 is a threat. You do have to block it, and then you will run into this draw by repetition, basically. So after queen h4, queen to f1, this comes with check, the best idea. King moves, and now rook to h7 check. King to e6, and now For some reason, either Maxim missed this or he was focusing on the other move that he played, but queen to f7 check wins the game on the spot, as after king captures, this will win you the queen. Queen captures, it's with check, and of course, black will have a knight and a rook for a queen, but it will not help him all that much. After you play something like king d6, queen g6 check is coming, your king and the knight are in danger, and you have to protect the knight. But then after you protect the knight, there are other problems here. Queen g7 check, king d6, and let's say you capture on b7, the rook is under attack, the knight is under attack, and with the king wide open in the center of the board, the white queen is simply too powerful, and something will fall. Black simply doesn't have time to start coordinating his pieces. So after king e6, we have bishop to c7, quite an interesting move. The bishop is now taking away the dark squares from the black king, and the threat is queen to f7 checkmate. So there's really no way to prevent this or to improve anything for black. Ding is simply forced to capture the bishop. We have rook captures, and now knight to d6, taking away the f7 and f5 squares from the white queen. But white is now simply up material, and it will be very hard for Ding to hold this. Rook captures on c5, b6 now. We have rook to c6 and the g3. It's interesting, why did the Ding play g3? Maybe you want to keep this option of queen e1, so maybe the white queen cannot move from f1, but whatever you play, let's say you play b5, you get rook to c5, and again, black has no move. The knight can't move because it prevents the queen from coming to f5, also it defends the knight here. You can't activate your queen because the queen has to keep an eye on the h5 pawn, and you can't afford giving up more material, so Ding decided to do it. g3. Now queen to h2 is definitely a threat, but Maxim figures it out. Queen f3, making room for his king. Queen h2 check, king f1, queen h1 check, king e2, and now comes queen to b1. We have queen captures on h5. You have to, well, grab some material, but also create some checking ideas for your queen. Queen a2 check, king f3, and now comes king to d7, attacking the rook. Rook captures on b6, and now queen to f2 check. We have king to g4, and now queen to e2 check. And now king to h4, the strongest move. Of course, black can never trade queens, he is down in material. We have queen captures on g2, but now comes queen to h7 check. King to c8, we have queen to g8 check, king to d7, and now for the third time, pause the video and finally beat Ding Liren and take away his unbeaten streak. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you have just, destroyed something beautiful, Ding Liren's chance of going all the way. But for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are truly an excellent player. For those of you who just want to enjoy the show, the move played was rook captures on d6, and it was in this position on move 58 that Ding Liren resigned the game after going undefeated for 100 games. The reason why it works is as after king captures it, queen captures on g3 comes with check, black has to trade queens, and now white is simply up 2 pawns in a completely winning endgame. So yeah, a very nice, unbeaten streak for Ding Liren that lasted since, I believe, September. Yeah, I believe it was September last year, maybe November, but I think it's September last year when he lost a game against none other than Anish Giri. So yeah, a beautiful game, and it's interesting that after Ding has done this, because we always mention that Ding already beat Mikhail Tal's record of going 95 games unbeaten, and that it's actually Sergey Tivyakov who holds the record, I believe, with 104 or 105 games. But no one actually believes Tivyakov that he was able to do it. To this day, I haven't seen a list of the games that he played. But okay, after this game, after Ding lost, Sergey Tivyakov tweeted on Twitter how Ding lost, and that he will still be enjoying the number one and being unbeaten. But then after people started writing him that it was the tweet was written in very poor taste, then I believe he took down the tweet and then he posted another one that wasn't so, where he didn't show that he was so happy about it. But yeah, definitely not something to be happy about. We have to congratulate people on their achievements. So yeah, truly a remarkable streak, 100 games unbeaten, and it will be very interesting when will be the next time someone comes even close to this. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Urban Pompe, Nicholas Mason, Alexandru Epuran, Mihovil Grguric, and Klaus Moller Nielsen for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. Well, of course, next video will be Carlsen versus Corona Game 4, but hopefully with some more interesting content. And the TAL video is coming on November 18th, when Latvia is celebrating their 100th birthday. Thank you all, and I will see you soon.